Hey everybody, this video is called Here Comes Trouble, Jephthah. And tonight we're continuing our pass-through study here in the book of Judges, where we're going to be looking at the conflict between Jephthah and the Emphraimites. So Judges chapter 12 verse 1, you're going to see it's a very short chapter. It says, Then the men of Ephraim gathered together, crossed over towards Zephon, and said to Jephthah, Why did you cross over to fight against the people of Ammon, and did not call us to go with you? We will burn your house down on you with fire. So Ephraim's newest threat was their jealousy of Jephthah's success, and it was possibly a lust to share in his spoils. And the threat was not only to burn his house, but to burn that house down with him. So it's very gruesome that in the threat that's being made. And Ephraim didn't have the role in the victorious battle of the Ammonites. In chapter 8, just a few weeks ago, we see a very similar response to Gideon in Judges 8 verse 1 through 3. And it's the pattern of the Ephraim tribe. And Gideon responded with tact and diplomacy. But we see that Jephthah wasn't a different sort of man coming in these verses ahead. In verse 2 and 3, it says, And Jephthah said to them, My people and I were in a great struggle with you, the people of Ammon, and when I called you, you did not deliver me out of your hands. So when I saw that you would not deliver me, I took my life in my hands and crossed over against the people of Ammon, and the Lord delivered them into my hand. Why then have you come up to me this day to fight against me? So Jephthah, he goes on here to declare, and he responds that God had won the victory through him when the Ephraimites just stood by, though they did have the opportunity to help. And he points out the essentially unjust character of their complaint. And Ephraim can be seen as chronic complainers when we look at the Ephraimites through Judges. But as they complained, they didn't participate. You know, they were bench cheerleaders in a way. In verse 4 through 6 it says, Now Jephthah gathered together all the men of Gilead and fought against Ephraim. And the men of Gilead defeated Ephraim, because they said, You Gileadites are fugitives of Ephraim among the Ephraimites and among the Manassites. The Gileadites seized the fords of the Jordan before the Ephraimites arrived. And when the Ephraimite who escaped said, Let me cross over, the men of Gilead said to him, Are you an Ephraimite? If he said no, then why would they say to him, Then say Shibboleth? And he would say Sibboleth, for he did not pronounce it right. Then they would take him and kill him at the fords of the Jordan. There fell at that time 42,000 Ephraimites. So verses 4 through 6, you see the word fords in here. And me, I hate the vehicles of fords, and this is not what fords mean in this passage, as obviously fords were not around back in this period of time. But here was a mockery to the Gileadites as lowlifes, the outcasts of Ephraim. And they retaliated with battle. And Shibboleth was the method used for discovering an Ephraimite. And it was the way that they would pronounce the word. And if they mispronounced it by an S rather than a sh sound, then it would give away being the unique indicator of their dialect. And the Ephraimites men were better at talking than they were at fighting. And Shibboleth means the ear of grain or flowing stream. And pronunciation of a word to judge ethnicity was also used later on in history and back in World War II, when the German soldiers would identify the Russian Jews by the way that they pronounced the word corn. They would say kuk rosa, something like that. And you know, it's like how we have different dialects in the United States here. Somebody down south, they might sound like, you know, y'all know when they talk, and you know, us up here in the Boston area, we park the car in the garage. There's different dialects. People have a different way of speaking. And, this passage does hit home because, it talks about how they can't pronounce some words. And, personally, me, I've grown up with a lisp, but I've never overcome. And, that's why sometimes you might make fun of some things, how I say it. But verse 7, it says, Then Jephthah judged Israel 6 years. Then Jephthah the Gileadite died and was buried among the cities of Gilead. So we see that Jephthah remained the judge for 6 years. In verse 8 through 10, it says, After him is Ibzan of Bethlehem judged Israel. He had 30 sons, and he gave away 30 daughters in marriage, and brought in 30 daughters, not dollars, daughters, from elsewhere for his sons. He judged Israel 7 years. Then Ibzan died and was buried at Bethlehem. So, in the wrap up this chapter, we get short minor judges that are introduced or announced here. So the first one up is Judge Ibzan. And it's not likely Bethlehem of King David would make famous. And it wasn't the Bethlehem of Judah, but this is likely the Bethlehem of western Zebulun. And that would have been about 10 miles north of Megiddo back in Joshua 19:15. But we see that he practices the traditional custom of making alliances in marriage. He was wealthy and reputable enough to have so many children, and he had many alliances through marriage. In verse 11 and 12 says, After him, Elon, not Elon Musk or whatever his name is, that was the electric car guy, says, After him, Elon the Zebulunite judged Israel. He judged Israel 10 years, and Elon the Zebulunite died, and he was buried at Azalon in the country of Zebulun. So the next judge is Elon the Zebulite, and he did so for 10 years, and he was different than the other judges. And God called leaders from various tribes and not just one, and you're going to see that as we go through the judges here. And, Samson is a judge that's going to be coming up that we're going to be speaking about, and he is a different type as well. But verse 13 through 15 wraps up the chapter here. It says, After him, Abdon, the son of Hillel, the Pirathonite, judged Israel. He had 40 sons and 30 grandsons who rode on 70 young donkeys. He judged Israel 8 years. And then Abdon, the son of Hillel, the Pirathonite, died and was buried in Perthoron in the land of Ephraim, in the mountains of the Amalekites. So the next judge was Abdon, who judged for 8 years. And we see that he's also wealthy and reputable and influential with a very large family. And he was a Pirathonite, which was where David's captain Bahiah was born. And we'll see that at the end of the year when we study 2 Samuel chapter 23, verse 30. And then also next year in 1 Chronicles 11:31 and 1 Chronicles 27, verse 14. And very large families suggest that the father's marriage to several wives, and this was a part of life that was tolerated, but it was never matching God's blueprint of what God has defined of a biblical marriage between one man, one woman, earlier back in the book of Genesis 2:24. And to have many children had to lure of extending one's human power and influence. Psalm 127 verse 3 through 5 says that children are a blessing of the Lord. Blessed is the man who is full of quiver. They're like arrows. But to wrap up the chapter here, we see the start of the chapter. We saw that the men of the tribe of Ephraim are angry with Jephthah, and we saw Jephthah's response to the people of the tribe of Ephraim. And we saw the Gileadites, led by Jephthah, overwhelming the people of the tribe of Ephraim. And we saw the importance in dialect identifying one by the way that they speak. And spiritually, we should be identified as Christians by the way we speak. Our speech needs to be seasoned with salt, as the book of Colossians tells us. And we saw the reminder of Jephthah's time as judge. And we looked at 3 more minor judges, which is how the chapter ends. And that's going to wrap up this video for today. We'll see you again sometime this upcoming week, as we're going to look at the birth of Samson. And for those who leave birthday wishes and all that, I just want to thank you ahead of time. I don't do studies on Sundays normally, and tomorrow's my birthday. So thank you, for your loving kindness, and, just praise God that he still shows grace on me, 31 years. And, I've lived reality of life where you don't just live and grow old. It's not real reality. So anything could happen anytime. So each day is a blessing from the Lord. And then the other thing I want to mention is, before I close out, is this upcoming week, my family and I will be away. So I'll be pre-recording the videos as I do now, but we'll still have videos while I'm away. Just won't know time frames, all that. So you might see it 3 a.m. in the morning, who knows. But, the good thing is, as long as Facebook doesn't remove it, you'll be able to watch it, and you'll be able to see on YouTube. So have a great rest of the weekend. God bless.